Phantom from Space was a 1953 people sat in cars talking for 90 minutes movie that was somehow passed off as a science fiction horror film. If you think I'm being harsh right out of the gate, go and look this up. It's a totally boring non-starter of a film. No, seriously, it's cool, I can wait. Phantom from Space was directed by W. Lee Wilder, a veteran of schlock. Seriously, I don't think the guy had one credit in his filmography that wasn't made on a shoestring budget. It's out-and-out radioactive movie-making at its unfinest, with titles including The Omegans, The Snow Creature, and Killers from Outer Space. It doesn't take a genius to figure out what kind of movie you're getting yourself into when you pop on one of his films. He's no Coleman Francis, but in many ways at least Coleman Francis had the talent of being completely devoid of talent. Wilder has some skill, and that in many ways to me makes him much, much worse. I will try and explain the film to the best of my ability, but do please bear with me, as not only is this film a bit of a mess, the characters are literally so unmemorable. I think the cast must have been given name tags just so they could remember who they were, both as people and as actors. The film follows two detectives or signal trackers, it's not made that clear, who one day find themselves in a spot of bother when a mysterious UFO crash lands, causing a widespread signal outage. The plot thickens when the police get involved more heavily, and two men turn up, one injured and one dead. After quite a bit of discussion about a description of the assailant given by one of the men's wives, and this is a quote, "It looked like a man in a diving suit, only it looked like he didn't have a head," eventually they managed to track the villain down to an old warehouse, where they managed to secure him in a small building, only to then raid the building and find him gone, barring his mysterious spacesuit. The team tests the spacesuit and find that not only is it impervious to water, fire and other elements, but it also contains breathing apparatus, meaning the visitor will need to be back or he'll suffocate. Thus begins a scheme to reunite the visitor with his suit, try and establish a peaceful truce, and possibly propel Earth's scientific knowledge into a state well ahead of its time. That's it, really. That's literally the hour and 12-minute film, more or less. I've saved you the ending because I don't like giving away spoilers, and also because it's arguably the best of this piece of crap film. To start with, this film has 5 locations, and that's pretty much it. An office, a lab, a warehouse, an observatory, and the inside of someone's car. And that's it. And 3 out of 5 locations are in fact just the same location with different set dressing. Sometimes the cast get out of their cars and fleetingly will catch a glimpse of a roadside or a tunnel. But I'd be quite confident in saying that at least 30 to 40 minutes of this movie takes place either sat down in an office or as a profile 2-shot of 2 people sat in a car. And in both of these, all that happens is the cast reel out reams and reams of exposition. In many ways, they might as well have not bothered shooting this. Instead, they could have just added about 5 minutes of description into the script and turned this into an audiobook. There's almost nothing to gain from there being visuals for this film. And considering how cool the title sounds, The Phantom from Space, it legitimately could not be a more boring film if it tried. It makes Ring of Terror look like Reservoir Dogs. I wouldn't even mind if the exposition was at least interesting, but it isn't. It's just padding. Most of the dialogue is fairly stiff, which is to be expected because this film was from the early 50s. But it's mainly just patter about scenes we've either just seen or exposition about events that are about to happen or have happened off screen. and the cast deliver this dialogue with all the warmth of syphilis. There's some serious deer-in-the-headlights acting going on here, and it only makes the film tank further. The script was written as a collaboration between Miles Wilder and William Rayner. Miles being W. Lee's son, Wilder and Rayner have worked together numerous times on multiple TV shows, including The Dukes of Hazzard, Different Strokes, and The Brady Bunch. This wasn't Miles's first rodeo either though, having written several B-movie features through his life, including such mesmerising titles as Bluebeard's 10 Honeymoons, Spy in the Sky, and 7 Guns to Mesa. Their writing at this point in their careers could best be described as suffocating. It's just totally devoid of any kind of flow or feeling. It's arguably one of the worst scripts I've ever sat through. And I've watched Tales from the Quad-Dead Zone. At least Quad-Dead Zone had multiple sets and used them relatively well. Here it's almost like if they thought they could get away with the cast performing on an empty soundstage, they'd almost certainly go for it. We literally just go car scene, office scene, car scene, office scene, lab scene, car scene, warehouse scene, car scene, office scene, car scene, again and again and again until the ending. It gets old. Really fast. I know I've been bashing this film a little bit too much, but I want to just take a break to point out some of its good points. Because this film does have some good things going for it. The special effects in this film are quite impressive for the time. The Invisible Man came out in 1933 and pioneered invisible effects, so some 20 years on, to see these effects had finally managed to trickle down to the low-budget features was really nice to see. They also do quite a good job of making the visitor's helmet float around. It looked believable, so nice job there. What didn't look believable? The testing of the spacesuit, in which you can clearly see that the suit's suddenly made out of different material each time they test it for fireproofing or waterproofing. It's ridiculous. As mentioned, the cast are totally forgettable. The names aren't clearly established, and there are so many cast members, I very quickly lost track of who was who and what was supposed to be going on involving who, what, and when. The only 2 characters who stood out for me were the lead female actress, because to my memory she was only one of 2 women in this film, the other being on screen for about 30 seconds, and a scientist with a thick accent. Because in a film with an all-American cast, a strong European accent stands out by a country mile. There's a narrator as well who describes various happenings that aren't shown on screen, which leads to the bizarre situation where the narrator gives you a load of exposition, only to then cut to an office where half the cast talk in exposition, to then cut back to the narrator who further hits us up with more exposition. None of the performances are memorable, however, and it could be best described as a shambles, quite frankly. Only emphasising the dull and total crapness of proceedings is the direction, which for about 90% of the film is just static, unmoving, unfeeling, mid to wide shots. It comes to something when I was genuinely excited to see a Dutch angle about 20 minutes in. I think there may have been one panning shot, but don't hold me to that. It's all flat and lifeless, particularly some of the office shots, which were just painful views. Wilder here is to direction what abattoirs are to animal conservation. The cast are just so low energy, and if I had to hazard a guess, I'd say that people were making this movie out of obligation or a paycheck and nothing more. This does not strike me as a fun movie to have been involved in. So the script is terrible, the dialogue is stale and lacks compassion, the cast were frankly wallpaper, and some somewhat decent effects are eclipsed by direction that frankly borders on abusive. What else is there? Well, the soundtrack's totally unmemorable. It's as hokey and stock as it's possible to be. There's not one memorable tune in this. It's ridiculous. The cinematography isn't much better, with everything being either mid, wide, or mid close-up. Apart from the aforementioned Dutch angle shot that turns up and maybe the odd two-shot when they're in a car. That's your lot. No creativity in composition. This is run-and-gun filmmaking with none of the run and a distinct lack of gun. Pedestrian is probably the best way to describe this. I mean, it's in focus, but that's about it. The editing has all the subtlety of a bulldozer, with random splices and multiple flat-out errors. There's a moment in my copy of the film where it randomly fades to black, the audio cuts out, and then after a pause it fades back up from black, showing the exact same scene, only with muted dialogue, and then the sound randomly kicks back in, and we're almost immediately led to a crossfade into the next scene. Now, I'm not sure if that's an error in the original film, or whether that's a tape fault that's happened somewhere down the line, but either way it was very baffling. There are multiple random audio dropouts throughout the film, and even the odd inappropriate use of B-roll. They literally just crash into B-roll at random near the beginning of this film multiple times. They also repeat their footage a couple of times as well to help pad out the runtime. There are establishing shots that don't stay on screen long enough to establish the establishings. It's a real mess of an edit. Not that I was expecting much. I got my copy of The Phantom from Space as part of the 50 Sci-Fi Classics movie pack released by Treeline Films and distributed by Mill Creek Entertainment. As with many of the other films from this set, the print quality of this release is dire. It's not quite unwatchable, but if it were even marginally worse, it would be. It's also another movie that's just been transferred straight off of VHS and slapped onto DVD. As with many of these budget releases, little to no care or attention has been given to making this film look good. If black and white isn't your thing, you'll be happy to know that there is also a fully restored colour version of this film that's basically as bad as the black and white version in every way, except now you get to watch the film in horrible hand-recolorised fug vision. It's almost like someone looked at this film and thought, how can I make it somehow even worse? If you want any more insight into just how bad and dull this film is, about 20 minutes before the end of the film, they spend 5 minutes re-explaining the entire previous hour's events into one big condensed catch-up, ready for the big final scene. I take it they did this for people who had either turned up an hour late, or for people who slowly slipped into a coma sometime around the 10th in-car scene. I suppose some people might think I've neglected to talk about the alien in this film. I haven't. He's collectively in about 10 to 15 minutes of this movie, and only really gets dealt with properly for about 5 or so minutes in the middle of the film, and for about 10 or so minutes at the very, very end. He's mentioned a lot, and we see the aftermath of his actions a lot, and this does give the illusion that the alien is in the film more than he is, but the reality is that he's pretty absent. I'm not kidding, you could probably have chopped this film down into a pretty decent 25-minute TV special, and it still would have been overly long. I really can't stress how dull and drawn out this film was. Based on the title and the style, I thought I was going to be in for a decent sci-fi horror. Maybe something like a knockoff of The Day the Earth Stood Still, or a more exploitation-driven version of The Invisible Man. But no, it's drivel. This film has only contempt for its audience, and I sincerely suggest you give it a wide berth. It's not a funny, dumb movie, it's a genuinely bad film with little to no redeeming qualities. Steer well clear.